mountain and we think it's beautiful, but then they paint it in just a different way or from a different angle, and suddenly you have a new perspective. Which brings me to the point of what I want to say or talk about today is, honestly, our unity, our connection. Yesterday, we had my brother's celebration of life right here. And if I'm a little verklempt today, yeah, I'm still having experiences around that. And it was very, very beautiful. It was way too long, as those things can be. But it was really beautiful and a wonderful tribute to his life. And there were so many takeaways from the experience. But I can tell you this, that as I prepared my part, because 3 of us spoke, and as I prepared my part, what really struck me was, I've often, when I've done a memorial service before, when you start thinking about that person, you think of this theme that you see in their life, and often it's right in alignment with what other people's experience from that person, whether it's compassion, and that just seemed to run through, that was the big river that ran through their life, or some other trait or attribute, their courage, their stick-to-itiveness. And when I was thinking about my brother's life, what really occurred to me was the fact that he was so multifaceted, and that each of us knew such a different part of him that it was sort of like the story of the blind man and the elephants, right? But we could talk about his achievements and the funny things he did and the exploratory things he did out in the world. But the thing that really struck me again was how it's not what we do, but how we do it. And so for me, and believe me, it is not my job to decide what his life meant. I can only say what it meant to me and how it impacted me. And other people did the same, and they told their stories, and we were just, as you always are, there's always some story, no matter how much you think you know that person, that you didn't know before. And I said, there's probably 1,000 things he did out in the world that none of us know about, But he embodied that connection. He found a way to connect to people in the world despite having a very difficult life. And he embodied stick-to-itiveness. And definitely that adage about it doesn't matter if you fall 10 times as long as you get up 11. And I just feel like this journey, we often believe it's supposed to be easy. Now, I believe we can get in the flow and we can make it so much easier on ourselves. I do not want to give up that thought. But I'm saying if it's happening in a difficult way, let's make it mean something. Let's transform that pain into something that we no longer have to regret, even if it came out of some ridiculous mistake that we made, or we think of it that way. But the phrase I began with, that I ran across, that I am ready to become more, I really contemplated that because it rang a gong inside of me. And I was reading it in a book that has to do with taking charge of your health. I'm ready to become more. And so what does that mean? Our health is really the word health, heal is in that word, right? So it's saying, let's heal all those parts of ourselves. And to me, I always equate the word healing with wholeness. So it's really just manifesting the wholeness in each of those places where we are not currently experiencing or perceiving it. So to me, saying, I'm ready to be whole, I think it takes a heck of a lot of courage to be able to look at those things that are not whole in our lives. We have to be willing to see them. The grace that we have, though, is that with the tools we have, we can choose to see it without the judgment. We can just be the observer who is course correcting, who says, I want to know what it is so I can fix it. I don't want to know what it is so I can judge myself. I don't want to know what it is so I can punish myself. I want to know what it is so I can fix it. And as I was saying, all of us knowing different parts, my nephew got up and told a story that, my brother was his dad. And he said that my brother described it to him this way, and I hadn't heard it, so I loved it. But he said, life is it's like you have your full glass of water, but there's a lot of holes in there. And he goes, so our job is to figure out what they are and plug them up and fix them so that we who we are as possible. And that really struck me as being right in line with my recent ponderings about it's not that it's not all there. It's just that we have to be willing to see where we're not in alignment with this incredible being we are already and desire to expand upon. We want to be, I'm not trying to be someone else. I'm trying to be the best me that I can be. And I am, as I heal, realizing that is so much more incredible than I ever envisioned. That if I can borrow God's vision, right? That's why we pray, that's why we meditate, is to borrow God's vision and to say, not my will, but thine be done. That doesn't mean I'm handing it all over to you and you are going to fix it. Well, there's some of that to it, too, this willingness. But as far as the awareness goes, to be able to say, I trust that your will for me is better than I could possibly come up with. It's like we're saying, I want to go to that concert. I wonder if I can even get in the door. And you're ecstatic to get the back row seat at the very top, and that's great. But what if you gave over your will to God and you end up in the front row? It's that kind of a thing where giving up your will to God doesn't mean, okay, I'll give up my desire to be better. That's not the way that works. Because God's will for us is perfect happiness. God's will for us is to know our wholeness. We were put here with this life to be this life as much as we can possibly allow ourselves to flower and blossom into. And it's not about judging. I mean, even the same type of tree side by side, they don't grow with the same branches in the same position, and you don't go up and go, that one's wrong because their branch went right and that one went left. We are here to grow from the way that the divine expression comes through us. And it is perfect. It is so perfect. I know that a lot of one of the struggles we may come up with, especially if we started in a different way of thinking, is that we are afraid that if we give ourselves that permission, we're just gonna, who knows? Well, if I think I'm perfect the way I am, I'll do whatever I want, I'll get in trouble, and I'll break all the rules, I think we're so far beyond that point. I really do. We're already into the first do no harm phase of things, and we're now just really trying to figure out how to be the best we can be, how to expand on what we can be. It's so funny to me, it's just so much fun to watch things line up, like the music is always so perfect. By the way, I just have to tell you, I had to try not to cry, not only because of how beautiful that song was, but you playing Amazing Grace in the video we had for my brother of his pictures. The last song on it was Amazing Grace. And so I was over there going, okay, I'm not going to cry right now. I'll cry later. But it's so in sync is my point. And so this one came up today, and Alan Cohen puts out a little daily blurb message. And it came up, your old idea of how far you can progress is being updated. And I love that. It's like saying, okay, that insinuates to me, God is even infusing in me to have greater vision. I love that thought. God is infusing in me, opening my eyes to have greater vision for myself, for what I can do, for how I can feel. And this is the thing that struck me too yesterday, seeing this celebration of life, was the theme wasn't what he did. It wasn't the particular achievements that he had or this or that. It was how he made people feel. And that we could all agree upon, that he just had a way of connecting with people, and he knew how to do that, and he was flexible about it. If they were silly, he could be silly. He could be silly and turn on a dime and look you in the eye and drop a wisdom bomb on you. You know, and I love that quality about him. And I almost think, you know, he's a very strategic chess player kind of guy. And I almost think, you know, he did that on purpose. He so knew what he was doing because it was effective. You know, we touch people's hearts. And then if we have something to offer, perhaps it will be received in the manner in which it is intended. And I wanted to read you a little something else from Alan Cohen because I felt like it was right in line with, one of the things I wanted to say is, especially, I love what Tama said in that opening thing I read about just, you may see a parade, you may be someone that sees your purpose come down the road in a parade, and there are those folks. They knew from day one, they just knew that was them, they embodied it with confidence, and most people, that isn't the way it unfolds. One of the things one of my daughters and I in particular talked about is the fact that most people, at least in our society, seem to have been given the idea that whatever they do, they have to be the best famous person in that field. That either you're going to be a famous singer, rock star, you're going to be a famous writer, you're going to be the scientist that wins this or that. Now, some people will do that, and it's great that they have that confidence and the backing and the support to do that. But most of us need to know that however we contribute is very valuable and doesn't fall short if we don't win a Nobel Prize. We're not falling short of our purpose if someone doesn't come up and give us an amazing accolade for something that we did. You know, and I just think, so what does that leave us with? And I think I so see us as we are one. We are one. So what does that mean? That means we're all in this together. We're walking each other home. So how do we connect? How do we connect? How can I help make your life better? How much support can I acknowledge I'm getting? You know, my daughter was sitting behind me yesterday during the service. I can't tell you how much it meant to me that every once in a while she would just put her hand on my back during that service, especially if she saw one of these going on, you know. I was like, you're good. That little gesture, I will remember that. I will always remember that. And I said, I felt you literally had my back. I will always remember that. How many times do we feel that urge and go, I don't know how that would be received? And know from your heart that if your intention is right, most of the time, not everybody likes to be touched, I get that, but most of the time, if they know your intention, they'll receive the gift from your heart. And I think that's so vitally important. Likewise, I think we need to, there's a lot to clean up. We were having this discussion last night too, that I sort of feel like at the end of the day, literally, part of our spiritual work could be a little bit of, you know, review of the day. And what could I clean up emotionally? What would I like to do differently? I liked starting the day with gratitudes and ending the day with a courageous meaning, not like, oh, I have to brace myself because I'm going to be, you know, judging myself, but truly to try to. And like, I'll just give myself as an example. I've moved through quite a lot of preparation for all of this, and I had way more anxiety than I expected to have. So that's a takeaway for me to go say, why did I make that stressful? What in me handled it that way? It could have been, what was I even afraid of? Because anxiety is a, you know, manifestation of fear. So what did I think was going to happen? And that's just for me to take away and do some homework about. How do I clean up that energy? And, you know, there's the thought that, well, that's over and done with, so that stress is off my back. But that was my response to something, that if I give myself a chance to learn from it, I have an opportunity to do it more peacefully the next go round. So it's how do I move forward with more grace? How am I willing to take a look at those potentially difficult things, those little things that we think are so ugly and terrible? And I remember when I first kind of started, well, when you're in your teens and you go through thinking, everything is so enlarged in your vision. And it's either the best or the worst thing that ever happened to you. Whatever that happened that day is either, and moment to moment, that could change in the same day. And I just think that it's so much about learning your way. How do you learn your way of calming? It may or may not look like anyone else, and please be open to other people's suggestions, because you want to try them on. You want to try them on and see if that works for you. And there may be some days that's the thing, and there may be other days something else works, but you're refining your tool chest. And I think I'm getting a little off track, but what I was trying to say with my brother in particular is there was this theme that kept coming up over and over, that he recognized oneness, and there wasn't anyone he wouldn't talk to. There wasn't any place he had this thing for going and hanging out in coffee shops to find that person that looked like they might be there alone, or that people might be afraid to approach them, or whatever it may be. And that's the person he would say, "Can I join you for a minute? How you doing? Where are you from?" And he has best friends. He had marriages that came out of that. And that was my brother. And so there was just this sense of him, this urge to connect. And I think we all have it. It manifests in different ways. But I think one of the things he really understood was the bottom line of service, of how do I connect and elevate you? And of course we know that elevates us. We know that it does, just by the very act. And then you may see yourself as a giver, and then all of a sudden someone's got your back when you need it. So this is from The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Alan Cohen wrote. Serving others is a way of participating in the grace of God. When we help another who is in difficulty, we are taking on some of his or her karma, quote unquote taking on. We are becoming the man who helped Jesus carry his cross. I can think of no higher act that we can do in this world. Says Master Hilarion, this is why the Christian teaching emphasizes above all else the commandment to serve one's brother in any way possible. For through this service, it is possible not only to set aside one's own karmic burden, and that's just whatever you've put out that you haven't resolved yet, that you're going to have to deal with if you don't, but to lift the load from the shoulders of another. And I see that, oh my gosh, what a divine setup, in the way we're born, the way we grow, the way we move through youth and middle age, and then in our older years, how we start out as so helpless, but it makes those around us learn to love in a way they never thought possible when they are in charge of this beautiful life. And we're given an opportunity to experience the give and the take, the service, and allowing ourselves to be served. We are given that opportunity through our entire life. And when we're strong of body, to be able to do those things that other people can't physically. And then when we're older, and we have this wisdom still to give, but to not judge ourselves if we're not the ones carrying the heavy loads physically. So to know there's this beautiful give and take, and honor every part of that journey. There's a give and a take and a service. And this may sound like just so many ponderings that are going on in this, but in our celebration of life, our celebration of being here with the ability to serve and the ability to love and the ability to make a difference in the world. And when I say that, not necessarily to win a Nobel Prize, but I will never forget her touching my back. We can do that every day. We can find a way to connect every day. And that said, there may be days we need to hold up and we're the ones we're serving. Sometimes we need to just cogitate, or marinate was the word I meant to say. So your old idea of how far you can progress is being updated, to return to that from Alan Cohen. It's like, how far can I progress? What does that mean to us spiritually? I think it just means, what does being unlimited spiritually actually mean? What does that mean? If you can picture for a moment what being unlimited spiritually would mean, the freedom to be your whole self and to not let anyone's judgment stop you from being your whole self, not even your own. To find that place, because I'm the one that stopped me more than anyone else, but to find your groove and your lane and to trust. Oh, what would that feel like? There isn't a life I've ever seen where everybody had it perfect from day one. We don't get up and walk without falling. That's how this works. It's part of the process. So can we just trust that it is about course correction? It's just about getting in the flow and allowing and believing that one foot goes in front of the other. One foot goes in front of the other. Do the next thing. And if in the healing process, if I just look in my life, I'll know what the next thing I'm supposed to do is. You know, for me, the anxiety that I watched myself go through is probably the next thing I'm going to be journaling and praying about and releasing in my meditations and asking what is in my own best interest now. What do I most need to know in this moment? I think that's one of the most powerful questions you can ask in prayer, which also helps you learn to listen for the answer. What do I most need to know in this moment? And the answer will be very immediate to whatever you're dealing with in this moment. It will be very immediate. You need to know you're safe. You need to know that nothing was going to happen that put you in a place that wasn't safe. You needed to know you were out. I'm just using myself as that example with the anxiety, that there wasn't anything to fear. Nothing big was going to happen that I needed to be afraid of. Perhaps it was just me judging myself, because that's what I have tended to do, about everything, me having everything in its perfect place for it to happen. Well, we all know you can plan something to the nth and something isn't going to go the way you planned. And it's okay. And you always say that on the back end. So why the anxiety, right? So I'm just saying, showing how we can get into these circular things. But again, if it's a training and a practice, that becomes so second nature, to just be in the presence of the living, loving God. And what would a living, loving God who wants you to experience ease and not struggle, how would they see this? What words of wisdom, what feelings of the heart would you be blessed with if you can hear what would the living, loving God say about this? With no restriction, with no limitation, with no judgment. What would the living, loving God say about this? Let's take that into meditation, please. So let's breathe a moment and let's just allow yourself a moment to consider what's popped up for you recently. Some place where you'd like to demonstrate wholeness. If it feels too big in this moment, you can pick something else, or you can just say, this is the one. This is the one. And you're saying, I'm choosing to be whole now. Great, beautiful Spirit, living, loving God. How do you see this? How do you envision healing? And let's see with our mind's eye the beautiful colors that strike you as healing colors, blues, greens, gold, whatever that may be. And see it swirling around this issue, permeating it, embracing it. Knowing that to God, this is all in divine order anyway. But Spirit says, okay, you're willing to heal this. What gift are you unwrapping here? How can I use this to further understand walking in peace? How can I use this to understand that God is love and God wishes joy for me? Can I understand that God gives every tool every day, gives us this day our daily bread, gives us what we need to heal this? It's already there. In God's mind, it's done. We're willing to be wise. We're willing to accept a lesson that will make our life more joyful and more healing, more powerful. And that every time we do, we are more of ourselves and we have more to give. And if that little voice says, who am I to do this? Know that God is saying, I know who you are. You were created to do this. You were created to heal. You were created to heal. And in that wholeness, you are everything you were ever intended to be. And in every day as we walk through, we allow our eyes to expand in our perception of beauty around us, to be aware, to be a better observer of the good. And as we're reviewing our day, to not leave out the wondrous things we did. We may remember in retrospect some word we said that lit up somebody's eyes, and we didn't let that stick in our heart, and we should. Meaning, in order to feel our wholeness. Shining your light is sometimes a pin light and sometimes a bonfire. But all of you is needed. All of you is needed. And when you are all of you, you give me permission to be all of me. You show me how it's done. You give me courage to get up and sing my song. You give me courage to be silly. You give me courage to be wise. When you are honest, you give others courage to be honest. When you go right to the heart of matter and speak what my friend said, speak the unspeakable. It's in the light now to be healed, and you give me courage to do the same. So bit by bit, unfolding this beautiful flower that you are, every stage being exactly perfect, every stage a part of the gorgeous process the divine order is. What if we allow ourselves to know, to truly know? We're on the path. We're not even near to falling off the path. The path is much broader than we thought it was, because we keep choosing love. Our ability to respond, our spiritual responsibility, our ability to respond with choice. Whatever's happening in our world, honing our ability to respond in the way that inner God is saying to respond, to connect in the way that that spirit within is saying to connect. Our ability to respond from a place of knowing that it is all good and we are all one. So let's do an exercise as we move through this next week. As anything comes up, just saying, how would I respond if I know we are one? How would I respond to this if I knew we are one? And observe. Observe what comes up for you. We are wise, intelligent, loving, caring people who want to see healing and wholeness for all. That divine nature is brilliant. Brilliant. And there are a multitude of answers on how healing can unfold because God is so unlimited. So let's breathe that deep into our spirit at this time. Breathe it into your heart and your mind and your emotions. Sometimes we pray to convince ourselves. Sometimes we meditate to feel. And somewhere in there is just an allowing and the observing that we're settling into something that feels so right and so good and so empowering that we know we're in that presence, the presence of the living, loving God. And maybe put your hand over your heart, or at least in your mind do so. Think of how far this being has come. Oh my goodness, the stories you could tell, right? But to know how much love is here now, the greater and greater capacity. And what if there were no limit? Because you connect with everything else. Let's breathe out anything unlike what we would choose to have in our world, but more importantly, as we let that vision of God come through, Let's let go of anything we believe God would not. No, giving our will to God. I'm trying to watch the wording, see, is how do we allow God to see this and flow through this? Spirit of love, help me be more of myself, just more. I'm enough where I am, but the spiritual journey, let me heal to feel my wholeness. Let me heal and feel my wholeness. Willing to release anything and everything unlike that. And the glass is full. And in reality, there are no holes. And you come to a place of peace and joy overflowing to such a degree you feel like you're pouring this energy out through the soles of your feet and through your hands and your fingertips and out the top of your head. And there's just this desire to share this energy with everyone. So let's picture that we're sharing this energy with everyone in this room, that you easily, with great love, picture them receiving the knowledge of the good of their being. See the beatific smiles. See the arms embracing and saying yes. See that so present in their world that you watch them shine. Hence the oneness that is so powerful to be able to hold the vision for each other because we are one. And so from this place, let's move into where we call forth those names of the other ones that we would speak.